Lowe's knows Sundays are for football, so tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
Get almost anything you need delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get chicken parmesan delivered. A little escape? No. A delicious bowl of grapes? Yes, that. An afternoon stroll? Sorry, no. A burrito bowl? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and in this episode 1052 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, thanks for tuning in. Now, before I get to the trends this week, I've got a favor to ask you. If you check out the description for this episode, you'll see there's a link to a survey. That survey, it shouldn't take long to fill out, but it's really helpful for myself and David Kitchen, my COO, to get honest feedback from you guys. I want Late Round Fantasy Football, this podcast, the content I'm producing, I want it to be as helpful and entertaining as it possibly can be. And the best way to get that done is through listening to what's working for you guys and what isn't. So if you could fill it out, it would be greatly appreciated. Now let's get to these 10 trends. The Raiders played their first game without Jacoby Myers in Week 10. It resulted in a lot more Tyler Lockett. Lockett ended up running a route on 80% of Vegas' dropbacks against the Broncos. That resulted in a 25% target share. Now, Trey Tucker was the other primary wide receiver. He ran a route on every single Raiders dropback. He's now done that 2 weeks in a row. Lockett wasn't a transaction this week on the Transactions podcast because it's the Raiders, and Lockett himself is 33 years old and past his prime. But Vegas does get Dallas this week. Anything is possible against that defense. There was a huge shift in the Texans' backfield in Week 10. I know I mentioned Woody Marks being a buy candidate last week, but I can promise you guys, I did not expect this. It was no doubt a weird game script, but Marks played 78% of the team's offensive snaps, which was by far a season high. Nick Chubb, he was at 14%, a season low. That resulted in Marks seeing a 74% running back rush share, which was a season high, and a 55% route share, which was another season high. Based on their rest of season schedule and all the stuff I talked about last week, if this usage continues, we're looking at RB2 production for Woody Marks. But it's just one game. That's still a pretty big if. Another backfield that flipped last week was with the Giants. A couple of weeks ago, Devin Singletary outsnapped Tyrone Tracy, seeing a 55% snap share versus a 45% one. In Week 10, though, that flipped. Tyrone Tracy had a 66% snap share, Devin Singletary 34%. Now, Tracy only scored 8.1 PPR points, but he was used a lot more than he was the previous week. Now, a huge problem for Giants running backs, they have a brutal rest of season schedule. Specifically, the next few weeks are absolutely terrible. Look at the Packers, Lions, and Patriots, 3 bottom 5 matchups for running backs by adjusted fantasy points allowed. Now, it eases up a little bit after that, but they do get the Vikings in Week 16, which is another bottom 10 matchup. So overall, this is good for Tracy, but the offensive environment, the schedule, just brutal for him. Tetairoa McMillan is seeing good target shares. He's been at 44%, 32%, and 35% target shares over his last 3 games. Those are some pretty crazy numbers. That's resulted in 24 targets. But that number is so much lower on the Panthers than it would be on another team, most other teams, because Carolina loves to run the football. Since Week 4, according to Fantasy Life data, Carolina has a minus 12% dropbacks over expected rate. Only Seattle has had a lower rate during that time frame. But Seattle's averaging over 30 points per game in this stretch. Carolina is averaging 16.4. It's just not conducive for fantasy purposes. Otherwise, McMillan could be smashing this year. After Kyle Monungai's big performance against the Bengals in Week 9, No one knew exactly how the Bears would split their backfield in Week 10. Well, the results are in. DeAndre Swift basically just played his typical role. He saw a 61% snap share, exactly his season-long average. He had a 56% route share, higher than his season-long average. And he had a 65% running back rush share and a season-high 22% target share. Those peripherals were kind of awesome for DeAndre Swift. Honestly, in general, DeAndre Swift has been low-key awesome just himself this year. He scored double-digit PPR points in every game since Week 1. He's averaging almost 16 PPR points per game. This appears to still be DeAndre Swift's backfield. Definitely from a fantasy perspective too, given that pass catching ability. The Philadelphia Eagles have one of the most frustrating offenses in football for fantasy purposes. And they're winning games, which makes this even more tilting. But if you remember, I talked about this earlier in the season. Over their first 3 games, they really were running the ball a ton. According to Fantasy Life's dropbacks over expected rate, the Eagles were 31st from weeks 1 through 3. They had a minus 7% rate. Then we saw that shift a little bit. Weeks 4, 5, 6, and 7, they were mostly neutral. And actually, during that stretch, because of one big game and dropback rate over expected, the Eagles were first in the NFL in dropbacks over expected. That was from week 4 through week 7. Things were moving in the right direction for fantasy purposes. And then the last 2 games, week 8 and week 10, they've been at minus 6% and minus 12%. They had a dropbacks over expected rate of minus 12% against the Packers. The issue with this is that the Eagles offense just isn't as good year over year, period. Through 10 weeks, just 36% of Philadelphia's drives are ending with a score of some sort. That ranks 25th in the NFL. Last year, across the season, that number was 45%. Philadelphia ranked 8th. Kevin Patullo in this offense, they're just not doing as much to confuse defenses. This is also something that we talked about earlier on in the season. Last year, the Eagles ran play action on 25% of their dropbacks. This year, that's fallen to 21%. Last year, the Eagles had an RPO rate of 14%. This year, it's 10%. They used motion on 46% of their plays. This year, 44%. All the while, the offense is just running a little bit slower too. They're not running as many plays. So it's sort of all of these small things. Not converting as well, not being quite as creative, not running it as quickly. All of those small things have combined to create more of a mess for fantasy purposes, especially for that passing attack. Zay Flowers has not scored a touchdown since week 1. And this is beyond a trend at this point. Flowers has now scored 10 NFL touchdowns on 290 targets. He had 5 touchdowns as a rookie. He had 4 as a second-year player. He's got 1 through 9 games this year. Now, obviously, he's a smaller wide receiver. So the initial thought is that he's just not that much of a red zone threat. And you would be correct. Flowers has seen 1 end zone target this year. Just 1. It came all the way back in week 1. He had 7 of them last year, but those 7 came in just 4 games. It's not like they've been consistently coming in. Meanwhile, on that same team, and just for comparison, Rashad Bateman had 11 end zone targets in the regular season last year. He's got 3 this year, despite the fact that Flowers is lapping him in target share. Now, this doesn't mean that Zay Flowers is never going to score a touchdown again. I'd be shocked with his target share if he doesn't find the end zone a few times rest of season. It's just more difficult for him to get there. And that's why he hasn't hit 15 PPR points in a single game since week 1. And it's what's limiting him from really reaching a great ceiling in fantasy football, as long as this usage continues. It's been about a month since I've talked about Quinshon Judkins on this 10 Trends episode. And unfortunately, not much has changed with his overall usage. Judkins has hit a double-digit percentage target share just once this season. That happened all the way back in week 4. He has just a 26% route share on the season. That's worse than David Montgomery for just some perspective, and it ranks outside the top 50 at the position. Judkins now has a 6.5% target share per game rate on the year. Since 2011, we've only had 14 running backs finish a season in the top 15 in PPR points per game with a target share per game rate below 7%. So it does happen, but it doesn't happen frequently. But of those players who got there, of those 14 running backs, all but 3 of them played in an offense that ranked in the top 7 in touchdowns per game. 2 of them were in offenses that ranked 11th, and then the other one was in an offense that ranked 17th. As we know, the Browns do not have a good offense. Judkins is the RB20 in PPR points per game right now, so he's not that far off from that top 15 spot. He also has a great schedule. That's made me so close to making him a buy candidate. But the lack of receiving usage just matters so much in fantasy football. It's really capping his ceiling right now. Chase Brown is back this week out of the bye, and something very important could be happening to his role. Samaje Perine could be sidelined. Now, I don't have that information right now, whether Perine will play or not. But entering their bye, Perine was week to week with a high ankle sprain. And the last time we saw Cincinnati, that made a huge difference in Chase Brown's role. Brown ended up seeing an 86% route share back in week 9. That was by far his highest route share of the season. And the way receiving sort of funnels down statistically, you've got receptions and yards and targets at the box score level. Then you look at target share, or the percentage of targets that a player has within his team's offense. And then that stems from route share. A player can't have a high target share without running routes. There's going to be a natural correlation between route share and target share. And in week 9, the last time we saw the Bengals, Chase Brown with an 86% route share saw a 31% target share. And it's no coincidence that it happened when Samaje Perine got hurt. So if Perine is out, you should feel really good about Chase Brown's usage. It has a chance to be better than you think. The last trend this week is about Jameson Williams. The Lions are using more Williams, at least compared to the first few games of the season. Now, I went to see if I could find anything in the data with the type of routes that he ran in week 10 with Dan Campbell calling plays. I couldn't really find anything significant. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't shout out what's been going on since week 4. From weeks 1 through 3, Williams never saw a target share of 15%. He was averaging a target share per game rate of just 13%. Since then, his target share per game rate is 18%, so a nice 5% bump. And he's now scored 16.6 or more PPR points in 3 of his last 4. Now, I mentioned I couldn't find anything super interesting about the kind of routes he was running. But sometimes players will play the exact same role and just get targeted differently, which is what I think is going on here. Since week 4, J-Mo has had an average depth of target of 8.7 yards. That number was 20.5 during weeks 1 through 4. So when he's been actually targeted, it's coming on plays that are closer to the line of scrimmage. That allows him to do more after the catch, and frankly, just gives him a way better floor in fantasy football. Given the amount of dome games that are upcoming for the Lions, I'm pretty optimistic about Jameson Williams maintaining better production down the stretch. I don't think we're going to see first month Jameson Williams during the final months of the season. That's it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you've yet subscribed to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Late Round QB. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll catch you tomorrow with the Weekly Sleeper Show.
Tis the season for identity theft. This time of year, most of us are checking off our holiday gift lists. But guess what? Identity thieves have lists too, and your personal information might be on them. Protect your identity with LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points every second and alerts you to threats you could miss by yourself, even if you keep an eye on your bank and credit card statements. If your identity is stolen, your own U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. And all plans are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. The last thing you want to do this holiday season is face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or other financial losses from identity theft all alone. Make this season about joy, not identity theft, with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Call 1-800-LifeLock and use promo code IHEART. Or go to LifeLock.com/iHeart for 40% off. Terms apply.
Greetings from my bath, festive friends. The holidays are overwhelming, but I'm tackling this season with PayPal and making the most of my money. Getting 5% cash back when I pay in 4. No fees, no interest. I used it to get this portable spa with jets. Now the bubbles can cling to my sculpted but pruny body. Make the most of your money this holiday with PayPal. Save the offer in the app.
Ends 12/31. See paypal.com/promo terms. Points can be redeemed for cash and more. Pay in full subject to terms and approval. PayPal Inc. and MLS 910457.